there's some new ones here as well, so thank you for trying us out. Hope it wasn't real hard finding parking and navigating and all that. Did everybody kind of get through okay? Was it decent? All right. Next time will be easier, because we all know where we're going now, but hopefully those signs outside helped a little bit too. Anyhow, okay, let's get rolling. I want to, first of all, thank you all for coming. You know, by the way, is the sound okay? Am I loud enough, Pat? Okay. We have a lot of changes now. We went through a whole survey process to find out what people were thinking about possible changes in our location, in our time, in our format, and we ended up here at Dominican, which we thought would be a more central place. The price is a lot lower because we're not doing lunch, obviously, so hopefully that will appeal to a lot more people as well. And we're looking to continue our programs and grow our audience, so if you're feeling good about today, please let your friends and acquaintances know. And hopefully every time we get together, we'll have more and more people. Although we do have a capacity limit in this room of 70, so hey, you know, we can't grow too big, but we'll face that problem when we get, yeah, actually the patio. Wow. All right.
Politics in the woods.
So thanks for sticking with us through the changes. We have surveys for you on the table, which at the end, if you want to jot down a few notes with your impressions about the format, the location, our subject matter, and so forth, we'd be more than happy to read your comments. It's worth noting, before we go much further, that Marin Coalition was founded in 1974. As I say, you know, I was 3 years old when I started it, and that's an old joke, sorry. But we're in our 50th year, which is kind of interesting, and I think a pretty nice accomplishment. So we want to thank you, our audience, and our supporters for your support, your encouragement, your feedback, your donations, and your attendance for all these past decades, and we're looking forward to 50 more. So before we get started, and before I introduce our guests, let me just tell you about the rest of the fall season. We have 4 events already programmed for the end of 2024. After today's event, we will have another election event on October 10. Mimi Willard, the leader of the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers, COST, who is right here with us. Here she is. Hi, Mimi.
I'm little, you have to look down.
Mimi will be here on October 10, same location, same time, and she'll present a second election program that will complement today's presentation. She'll be talking mainly about, today we're talking mainly about the candidate races. Mimi is going to talk to us in detail about the state and local ballot initiatives. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Terrific. So between this event and that event, you'll have everything you need to know on how to vote in November. The next event will be November 20th. We will be getting an update from Rod Kerr. Rod is the foreman of the 2023-24 Marin County Civil Grand Jury. I know we've got many grand jury members here today. That grand jury completed its work on June 30, and Rod will be here on November 20 to provide us with a summary of the issues that the Civil Grand Jury investigated this term and their recommendations. He'll also talk about the vital role that the Civil Grand Jury plays in Marin County and how residents of the county can apply to serve on future grand juries. And then lastly, for this year, we'll be doing a program on December 5, where we will hear from Derek Johnson. Derek is the newly installed Marin County executive who recently succeeded long-standing top administrator Matthew Heimel. Now that the torch has passed, this will be an opportunity to hear what our county's top priorities are under the new leadership. So again, same timing and location for these future programs in the fall. As far as today, first of all, just a reminder, if your cell phones are still on, please silence them. And today's event. So we're going to talk about the election today, as you know. Dick Spotswood is the politics and government columnist for the Marin Independent Journal. His IJ columns appear every Sunday and Wednesday. If you haven't checked those out, they're must-reading, in my view. A San Francisco native, Dick is a former Mill Valley City Council member from 80 to 92 and a 3-term mayor of Mill Valley. He served for 10 years as a director of the Golden Gate Bridge, Highway, and Transportation District, representing Marin's 11 cities and towns. And after 4 decades as an attorney, Dick has now retired from the law. Mazel tov. Greg Brockbank, a self-confessed political junkie of Marin politics, having compiled candidate lists for over 20 years. A frequent speaker and writer, he appears frequently on public access TV to analyze and discuss local elections. Greg is a 30-plus year attorney, owner and operator of the Marin Law Center.
Formally, I'm retired now too.
Oh, I have an old bio.
Yeah,
Forgive me.
it is over. That's right.
All right, and he is past chair of the Marin County Democratic Party. He's also served on the boards of several dozen civic and political organizations in Marin, including 22 years as an elected official on the College of Marin Board of Trustees and on the San Rafael City Council. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. Thank you very much.
All right. Increasingly, Dick and I have been doing this a few years, and increasingly I'm getting blunter and blunter about saying I like to grab an issue, frame it, lay out the issue, sound like a lot of laundry list of candidates. Once in a while, throw even a story. I think I got lots of good stories, but Dick has way better stories. So I'm going to toss them to him a lot after I say that we agreed on local races first. We agreed on the county supervisor's race first. This is one that warrants very little introduction, I think, but maybe some discussion, because it's the runoff between Brian Colbert and Heather McPhail-Schriederen. Brian got 43-something% of the vote in the primary, and Heather got 28-something%, so she's got a little bit of an uphill battle. Seems to me, and I'm going to ask you what your opinion is, she seems like a dynamic, charismatic, hard-charging, terrific, impressive candidate, but she doesn't have near as much experience from the 2 terms on the Kentfield School Board as Brian Colbert does after 2 terms on the San Anselmo Council. That's what the IJ said.
Well, I will say that this is called the second supervisorial district. It's the Ross Valley. It extends into parts of Larkspur and Ross, the town of Ross and Kentfield. The primary had 4 candidates: mayor of Larkspur and the Ross Valley school trustee. It was an unusual campaign. All 4 were extremely well qualified, in my opinion. All 4 showed their respect for the voters by treating their opponents with respect. One of the fellows in the race who did not make the runoff, the top 2 runoff, actually ended up endorsing one of the other candidates. It was just nice to see, at least here in Marin, that we can have a contested race for a powerful office, 1 of 5 members of the county governing body, the Board of Supervisors, treat everybody with respect. And let me emphasize, when the candidates treat each other with respect, they're treating you, the voters, with respect. If they don't treat each other with respect, they haven't got much respect for you either. And so that's just something to keep out at any level of politics, from the, I don't want to pick too low, when I say the Almaty Sewage Service District, the President of the United States, but there's truth to that. The race for Board of Supervisors, as Greg mentioned, is probably the marquee local election, because the supervisors were big, and some of the other races, they had no opponents this year. Stephanie Moulton-Peters brilliantly won without an opponent. Dennis Rodoni topped her by winning without an opponent.
He had somebody running, he just didn't campaign much.
Well, that's okay. Close enough. I don't regard that as a compliment to anybody. I like to see contested races, because contested races give you a chance to hear the people. And it gives the candidates a forum. It forces them almost to have their forum. And most candidates, most, not all, kind of like it when they can win, because it shows that they've prevailed over somebody and that their agenda has been certified, if you will, by the voters. The lack of an opponent isn't necessarily a reflection on the candidate. It's more a reflection on the community and the vibrancy of the political culture in that particular town.
It's a lucky and it's a fluke chance. City councils tend to be contested nearly all, with city council, school boards maybe half the time, the special districts less than that. So it depends on what level we're talking about. But I have to tell you about contested races. Every elected official will tell you and sincerely look you in the eye and say, absolutely, contested races are good. I'm glad I'm running. It's good. They honestly feel, God, I wish I had a free pass. Oh, God, I wish I wasn't contested. Oh, it'd be so nice. And I'm getting blunter by telling them, yeah, not doing you any favor if you get a free pass. You need a contested election every 4 years. And so does the public. You're all better off, even though it's a pain in the butt and incredibly time consuming. You're all better off and you're better off.
Al Boro used to come up to me and say, I knew Al very well, and the late Al Boro, if you don't know, he passed away last week. he used to say, "You're always encouraging people to run." You know, come on, I need to run. Now, you know, I know you got it.
He never got a serious, he didn't get many serious opponents, but I never got a free pass. I must have run 10 times and I never got a free pass.
Let's look at the communities in Marin that are having really contested elections. And I want to say thank you, God, for giving us Fairfax. Because it's God's gift to political columnists. I mean, let's just face it. There's just so much to write about in Fairfax. It's really tough to stop, right, Mimi?
Were you actually going to tell us about what you think about the supervisory election?
Oh, okay. They're both fine people. I am going to be presiding at a debate. I believe that you've arranged that debate. Therefore, it's not proper for me to say who I think should win.
Would you tell people then where to find that out or where to hear the debate?
Well, I think the way to listen, the way to determine who you vote for is to listen to a cost-sponsored debate.
When is that?
That's coming up just next week, isn't it?
You should have flyers out at every table.
It's available on most television stations in America, but here in Marin, if you go to register at the cost website, am I correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
You will then be sent a link, and that you'll be able to join this webinar and listen to me ask questions of the two candidates who are running for supervisor.
You did the
And
primary.
it's on Tuesday night.
Okay. Tuesday night at
Tuesday
7.
night.
What's that?
It's Tuesday night.
Tuesday night.
And Wednesday is the MMWD.
Oh, yes. Your whole life is ahead of you. You can watch 2 nights of this and forget about the Colbert Report, you know.
I have the same problem. I moderate some of these sometimes, and I try to be neutral because I'm in too many endorsement committees, but sometimes I fail. I endorse somebody. So I suppose I have full disclosure. I've endorsed Brian Colbert because he had more experience, like the IJ said, and the Democrats said. On the other hand, the Marin Women's Political Action Committee endorsed Heather.
The good news is that I don't endorse because the newspaper endorses. And that means this is the great reward. I cannot give money to candidates.
Yeah.
You know, when I first started writing, I can't believe what I started saving. Not being able to get that phone call, and I wish I could, Doug, but I can't. And so that is one of the benefits. Fairfax. Fairfax is, first of all, it has a vibrant town political culture. We were talking before, Greg and I were talking about the candidates, and in some towns, Nevada's one, where name recognition is important. Most people don't know the names of the candidates, and in most elections, name recognition is important. It's not particularly important in Fairfax because the folks in Fairfax follow things in closely. They know the names. You stop a person and they tell, well, yeah, I can tell you about Frank Egger. I can tell you know, that sort of thing. And so it becomes a little bit like national politics, and that most people that I've talked to in Fairfax pretty much kind of got their ideas on who they're going to vote for. We, the Independent Journal, issued endorsements today with 2 on one side and 1 on the other side. I said to Greg, well, that's kind of splitting the baby in the middle. It's kind of unusual, but I don't think very many people in Fairfax are going to do that. I think they're either going to tend to vote for the incumbents. There's 3 incumbents running, or they're going to vote for one of the 4 challengers, all of whom are respectable challengers. There's no, as we use the term of art in this trade, nuts running. Nuts are people that don't campaign, put their name on the ballot, you never see them again. We don't have that in Fairfax.
3 former council members are among the challengers, and 1 who's run 3 times before at least. That's an incredibly experienced field of challengers. By the way, I distinguish between the term challenger and new candidate. Most don't. In Fairfax, since all 3 incumbents are running for re-election, all of the challengers are just that. I call them challengers because they're challenging the incumbents. So I want to hear, why don't you like the incumbents, and why do you think you'd do better? That's a totally different kind of campaign sometimes than if you have a vacancy among the incumbents, somebody stepping down. Then I don't call them challengers because they can be just new candidates who want to join the incumbents, not fight against them and say they're bad. So that's a very different race. So Fairfax is one, San Anselmo's the other. Fairfax, there are 4 challengers to 3 incumbents.
You know, can I point out that they did a poll on their road tax. They want to do a bond measure, an $18 million bond measure to fix their roads. And when they did a poll on that, for some reason they also said, do you feel confident in your town council? And the poll came back, no. And that's why we're challenging.
Yeah, he's one of the candidates, obviously, and
Doug Kelly, everybody, a former mayor of, favorite councilman in San Anselmo, and Ross Valley.
I'd love to hear all this stuff, and I'd love to
Sanitary
get it.
District.
But there's about half a dozen candidates, at least if not a dozen, in the audience right now, so we better not set a precedent of having everyone want to comment. Sorry about that. Anyway, so that's Fairfax. Bruce Ackerman, Barbara Kohler, and Chance Catrano are running for like their fifth, third, and second term or something. And like you say, all very fine incumbents if you like those three incumbents, but many people in Fairfax do not. More people have made up their mind, I bet, and have fewer undecided, this far before the election, I bet, in Fairfax than any other city. Because usually the challengers or new candidates are unknowns. None of these folks are unknown. Political watchers in Marin know all four of these challengers. That's amazing.
Fairfax has rent control on the ballot. Fairfax has a reputation, I was going to say fair or unfair, it's fair, that it is the most progressive, left-leaning town in Marin County. The opinion may have been exaggerated. If the reaction of some folks in Fairfax about rent control is an example, it may be a very severe mistake. It's very possible that the incumbents will lose. There was an effort to recall pretty much the entire city council, and some, I don't want to say funny business, but the staff really got in the way of that, the city staff. Fairfax staff is part of the problem. The council members, matter of fact, I should have put this in the paper, but the council members aren't the problem so much when it comes to transparency as the staff. I have attempted to communicate with the staff in Fairfax, including the registrar of voters, county clerk, city clerk, and the city manager. Nobody returns your call. Nobody. And when they don't return my call, I'm not just representing me. I'm representing my readers. They're not returning the call for the readers. They know that. That's why in 10 of 11 cities, the city manager calls back instantly. So does the city clerk. I mean, it's just bang, bang, bang. I met with the county administrator. You mentioned Jared Johnson's coming. It was a kind of formal meeting. After I left, I got a call from him saying, can we spend more time together and just talk about things? That's the county administrator. And the Fairfax city manager, I've never met her. Clerk, the registrar, big deal's coming up. No calls back from the registrar. So, that's Fairfax. They have a rent control measure on the ballot. If rent control loses in Fairfax, what does that tell you? It tells you that perhaps the sponsoring group, the Democratic Socialists of Marin chapter, might not have a completely close read on the folks of Fairfax. I suspect, if I had a hunch, rent control is repealed in Fairfax. And I certainly wouldn't want to be the staff, because if I was part of the new staff, part of the new council, I'd be talking about looking at it for interviews. Because I want a staff that's going to make the council look good. And you look good by responding to the press, and you look good by responding to the folks out there. I think Fairfax is going to be very, very, very volatile. And that's the first place I'd be looking for election night, solely for excitement.
Incumbents usually have an advantage, and they may hear, but probably not as much as in most places where the incumbents have a certain amount of name recognition, as they do here, because the challengers have maybe almost as much name recognition, at least some of them. So it will be an interesting one to watch. Now, if maybe the dissatisfaction with incumbents, which I think comes and goes in waves, is stronger in Fairfax than others. But I just have to make a note, about 4 years ago, I was watching this very race with many of these very same candidates, and 5 incumbents in major races were defeated for re-election. San Anselmo Council, Fairfax Council, College of Marin, County Board of Education, and I'm going to forget the 5th one. But anyway, that's unusual. Usually maybe one incumbent gets knocked off, but 5 in 2 councils and 2 education bodies and a water board maybe. No. Anyway, this time, who knows?
Well, one small story, and we'll move on from Fairfax. The Fairfax Council was interviewed by the Independent Journal's editorial board this week. I happened to be present on Zoom for that. And a friend of mine whispered a Fairfax person, whispered some suggestions. People do that all the time. So I picked up on one of them, and I said, I'm going to bring up an old issue. I was well aware that nobody on the council wanted to hear this question. You know, during 2020, there was a major movement to rename Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. That was what we call peak woke. And nobody wants to bring that up right now. And the person I asked, so who on this interview panel wants to keep that going, or pick up the name, or change the name from Drake to whatever you want to change it to? And most of the non-incumbents were saying, I think that's over with, thank you very much, it's gone. And the incumbent said, well, it's not a hot issue, but if it comes up, we'll certainly ask everybody in town, which is one way of saying it's dead. It was just interesting, because you want to ask questions that they don't necessarily, the candidates don't necessarily expect. The easy ones are about streets and roads. The Fairfax streets and roads were in terrible condition, but Marin roads are not always the best, so it's kind of a universal question. Many towns have street and road measures on the ballot. But look for the questions that are kind of, you're really not looking so much as for the answer as to see how they handle it. What's the reaction?
It's a Rorschach test.
San Anselmo has not quite as many candidates, but almost 6 candidates for 3 seats. But this one only has one of the 3 incumbents running for re-election, Eileen Burke. The other 2 are stepping down, and so the other 5 are all new candidates. Now, something interesting about Eileen Burke, she's not here today, you didn't see her. You would, unlike Fairfax, where the new candidate that won 4 years ago by knocking off an incumbent, but now this year is a fully entrenched incumbent that everybody likes and endorses, at least among major groups of people. Eileen Burke is not. Eileen Burke seemed to me in the candidates form angry and resentful and taking credit for things she shouldn't take credit for, and she did not get endorsed. So she may be, even though she's the only incumbent, you think that's a sure ticket to success, right? Not in this case, maybe. I've seen the others in various ways. It features one of only 2 Republicans of all the dozens of people running for city council. Gus Meyer, don't know anything about him. But there's a Yoav Schlesinger, and speaking of well-known former council member candidates, San Anselmo has one, Ford Green. And Chantel Walker, who I know very well, and is a really exciting candidate. I wasn't sure how well she'd do, but I'm beginning to think she'll win.
The thing to remember, Greg, though, in Fairfax, is the town is pretty much divided into 2 factions. Mm-hmm. And Eileen Burke is part of one of those factions. And that's not it's one associated with former council, former mayor, Paul Chanel, former mayor Jeff Croop. And it's not an unsubstantial group, since they were effective at blocking the flood control basin at Memorial Park. So I would not look at certain endorsements as telling, because those groups will never support that group. By the way, the Democratic Party does endorse, but virtually all the candidates in Marin are Democrats. I mean, I always find that kind of interesting. It really is telling you which group controls the Central Committee. But I'm curious on who the other Republicans are.
The only other city council candidate that's a Republican, I think, is the one Novato council candidate in one district for the one open seat.
Yes. Between
Kevin Jacobs and James Petray. James Petray is Republican.
Yeah. But so, it's kind of curious that all the candidates are Democrats, so it's an internal deal.
Becoming more and more that way, but also there are more what used to be called independents, and then they called declined estates, and now they're called NPP, no party preference. There are a half dozen of those, more than Republicans, just like the registration of Marin County is like well over 50% Democrat and well under 30% Republican, and
No, 12%.
12, and more than that is a declined estate, no party preference now, like about 20 or so, I think. Huh?
I'm a happy no party preference voter.
Yeah. All right, that's San Anselmo, unless anybody has any other thoughts. Oh, I just have to talk about Ford Green. He first got elected like 16 years ago, served 3 terms. Controversial character, says things that piss people off, but also they think he's a fighter, and people like fighters. He also walks the hell out of town, and people like that, and he does well. So I wouldn't write him off, even though he got voted out 2 years ago, 4 years ago. If anybody can make a comeback, don't discount Ford Green.
And he's on the Eileen Burke side.
Yeah, there's definitely a split there. All right, the next most crowded one maybe is Sausalito with 5 candidates for 3 seats. Mm-hmm. 2 incumbents out of the 3 seats, Melissa Blaustein and Ian Sobieski. Ian Sobieski is one of the no party preference, but the rest are all Democrats, yes.
Is he a no party preference?
Ian Sobieski is, Sobieski.
Dick, I don't think Eileen is on the Ford Green faction at all. She ran against him and defeated him.
Oh, really?
And she was endorsed by Tom McInerney and John Wright.
I had the impression she was one of the attorneys on Paul Schignell's defense list.
Might have been, but I don't think
You know-
not necessarily puts her in the same.
All right.
Thank you for that clarification. I'd hate to have people get the wrong impression, because alliances are very important, and sometimes we can't always keep track of them. Where were we?
Sausalito.
Sausalito. Melissa Blaustein first hit the scene, I think, about 8 years ago and lost her first race, but she made a big splash, if you'll pardon the expression, because she's a long-distance swimmer. But she raised a ton of dough. Then she ran again and raised even more dough and won. But so did somebody else that was new, Janelle Kelman, who is not running for a second term because she's running for lieutenant governor.
Yes, lieutenant governor.
Why? Seriously? I mean, nobody's ever gone from city council to any statewide office. Why does she think she could do that? She raised a ton of dough. She could probably walk into a second term with minimal campaigning, as Melissa Blaustein probably will, although she's not without
Greg, you
controversy.
and I should honor people that have risen from council member positions to a much higher office.
Hal Brown is one of the rare ones that even tried it from county supervisor to statewide office, and he lost badly.
Yeah.
I know, I worked on that campaign.
But Barbara
That's
Boxer
true.
won for the supervisor.
She went from supervisor to congresswoman, and from congresswoman to U.S. Senate.
Also, you have former mayor and council member Sandra Bushmaker, who
Yes.
after 20 years is
sorry.
trying to come back.
Forgot about it. And a woman named Jacqueline Americas.
And Steve Woodside, who many will remember as formerly county council of Marin County.
I knew he was county attorney, county council, former county council. So Sausalito is up in the air, has one empty seat, possibly a vulnerable incumbent. Ian Sobieski's less known, maybe two vulnerable incumbents, and two or three new candidates with interesting qualities.
Okay?
Tiburon has 4 for 2. Both incumbents, Holly Thier, who's become somewhat of a superstar in the local scene. Everybody loves her, it seems like. And a guy who just got elected to a special election last year, Isaac Nickfar. So those are the two incumbents, and they have 2 challengers, Chuck Hornbrook, and speaking of former council members, yet another one. This is what, 5?
Andrew
6?
Thompson.
Andrew Thompson, who had served like 12 years ago.
Here's a little nuance. In Tiburon, the the representative of the mayors and council members from Marin County, who was sent to the director of the Golden Gate Bridge, the post I held, was held for a long time, by Alice Fredericks, who was a Tiburon councilwoman. She was bumped from the board of directors of the Golden Gate Bridge, and this is where it gets awkward, by her fellow council member, Holly Thayer. And the Tiburon Council voted 3-2 to back Thayer, her own council. I would suspect, just a hunch, I'm just going crazy here now, that Alice Fredericks is not the greatest admirer of Holly Thayer. What do you think?
I think they're both very professional, and they're not going to let on that there's some unseemly feud between the two, but I think there definitely must be. They're definitely factions, and they each sponsored a different candidate in the special election for council last year. And Alice Fredericks, despite the fact that she'd been on the council for like 20, 25, 30, she's almost the dean of the council members in Marin, and you'd think it'd be very powerful, but her candidate got 25%. Isaac Nickfar beat her at 75-25, and he's running for re-election. He's even better.
I'm not sure being the dean anymore is a powerful position. I think it's something you want to avoid saying, no, I just arrived yesterday.
You mentioned that about Pat Eklund. How many? 30 years now?
I give a talk to a group every year, and I ask who in the room is from Novato. I'm going to do that right now. Who's from Novato?
29, Pat Eklund, 29.
29 years?
Oh, I asked this group is name one member of your city council, and they always say the same thing over the years.
That's true.
Pat Eklund.
She probably is the only one most people could name.
Mark
Ruben Michigan.
Milberg, Tim O'Connor, Pat Eklund,
Very good.
Rachel Farrack, and Susan Warnick, who's not running
Who's not
this
running.
time.
Okay, Pat Eklund's not up, but we'll get to Novato. But I have to make one comment about Novato. There are, as some of you may know, something called full-service cities, like San Rafael, that does everything that most cities do, big cities especially. But there are some cities that contract out to a lot of services, including Novato, even though it's almost as big as San Rafael. And they contract out a lot of services, including to special districts that you elect people for, like the fire district, the sanitary district, and some others. And so you have a lot more elections in Nevada. Plus, in the last decade, that's been true for decades, but in the last 5 years or so, Nevada's districts were so big, Nevada was so big, all these special districts, that they split them up into 5 districts each. So now we have like 20 districts in Nevada. And you know how many of them are contested?
0.
1 city council race. 3 uncontested. So much for bringing in more candidates and making it easier for people of color to win. We believe in diversity. Look at our 2 speakers here. 2 old white guys, both retired attorneys.
The reason that we have district elections in some of these towns like Novato, San Rafael, is that a lawyer in Malibu read a portion of the California law that he thought would force districts to have district elections. Now, we're both lawyers and we understand making money. And so he would then write to, he won a case. He would then write to, let's pick the city of Nevada as an example, and say, I'm going to sue you unless you create district elections. Public didn't have any say in any of this. They would then say...
And you got 30 days to accept this, otherwise I'm going to sue you and it's going to cost you tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you accept it and make the change to district elections, you only have to pay me $20,000.
35.
35.
Tell them what a district is versus at large.
Yeah, and the idea was you'd elect more Hispanic people. That was what the ostensible reason was. Notice how well it's worked in Novato. Nobody running for council seat except in one place.
2 years ago, Magali Lametta walked onto a school board seat uncontested, which was unusual and surprising and a credit to her political strength. This year, 1 more did it, and we're talking young women of color. And another one barely has a challenger, but not a serious one. So these are 3 young women of color onto school boards in districts, unopposed or almost unopposed. That may be progress, even if there are fewer candidates overall and fewer challenges.
I would argue that's not progress. That's tokenism. That's why I'm not a progressive.
These are all impressive candidates. They had to beat out all the other candidates. If you'd seen any of them in candidates forum, you'd have been impressed by them, but only one of them's in a contested race because they scared off all the others. You gotta be pretty good to scare off all the others. That's not tokenism.
Well, I think
They
it's a
have
flaw.
also done a ton in the community and
Yes.
proven themselves to
Yes.
be very articulate and very committed to the work in the county.
It's a disaster for the town, Rachel, councilwoman here elected by district. It's a disaster for the town. Thank God San Rafael has a directly elected mayor. Novato doesn't. There's no unifying factor in the town. It was, it wasn't rank progressivism, which I don't particularly like. It was simply making money on his part. There was no idealism. And in fact, there's statistics statewide that show it's a flop.
We were forced into it because of the legal situation to go district, and that's why the school district went district first, and then the city did.
Let me just make sure, clear one thing. I have no objection to taking the $35,000.
Now that's not usually the way the law works, as Dick and I both know, but this particular law, the California Civil Rights Act, was amended 10, 12 years ago or something in such a way that said, okay, the public can sue, Private Attorney General Act, and so people like Kevin Schenkman, that lawyer from Malibu, figured it out that, hey, if I send these threatening letters, a bunch are going to pay me right away, and a bunch I'm going to litigate with and eventually win, so this is just a win-win situation for the lawyer.
Yeah, I don't think it's a success. I don't want to be.
I agree. I don't like the whole
I don't want to be
concept.
unequivocal.
All right, 1 10-second story.
Yeah, so I have a question here though.
Well, even if it is tokenism, those people now will have experience, and the next time, then there may be more. So even if it is tokenism, it's progress.
And it's representation.
Well,
And
that's
it's
why we
representation.
agree to disagree.
Even though we started out this conversation saying uncontested races are bad, contested races are good, and I just pointed out a minute ago that a whole lot of uncontested races people are walking on, but I would rather have women and people of color, especially young women of color, walking on uncontested seats, bad as the uncontested part is, rather than have them join a crowded race, which would always happen in the past, at large, and lose.
Exactly.
How do you know that the person that's applying for the uncontested race is not a true wacko? That has happened in a number of California counties where there've been a wacko. They may have been a move forward, but the wacko American community is significantly large.
Well, I think it's occasionally true that a wacko...
David Conley, by the way, for trivia stuff, that's how David Conley got his first elected office.
He walked down on...
He was out in the old Dixie District. I knew at the time. I said, holy moly, you just filed and you got the damn thing?
There it
Yeah, I know, it's
I
great.
would also appoint
There are occasional walk-ons that were uncontested.
But you go through the process.
You could say
You still go through the process.
you were powerful enough to scare everybody else off, but the truth is, you got lucky. But again, you didn't have that contested race, you didn't get the advantage. It really is an advantage.
We'd be a little better off if we had term limits in some of these spots.
Yeah.
We need, we can talk about various races, but we've got Ross Millerick, who's running for the school board, county school board.
College Marin.
He did 33 years on the school board. And then he's running against a woman, O'Brien.
Yeah.
She's done 20 years. So I decided to take a look at what their benefits were. Holy moly, the stipends for the meetings are fine. I don't have any objection.
$240.
What the hell are they getting $25,000 for fringe benefits?
Healthcare.
You'll be reading about that.
That's why they're doing it.
I'm not gonna say which Dick,
So.
but there's one person who serves on one of these boards that goes on a lot of training,
Yes?
and I've always noticed it's like Reno, Vegas,
Oh!
place in London that's
That is a perk of elected officials, but neither the salary or even the health care, which admittedly is worth much more than the salary, is why people run. Almost never, because it's so much work. Now, there's some egomaniacs, I suppose, that do it for that reason, but 99% of them are good, public-spirited citizens like you and everybody else in this room that are running for public office for the right reasons, and they're serving in public office for the right reasons, and they get reelected for the right reasons, and if they're not, they get bounced. That's the way it's supposed to work, and it does.
I don't have any problem with the meeting fees, and by the way, some are okay. I think there ought to be a payment for people who have, younger people, who have childcare expenses. But medical insurance, I am a member of a communist single-player health plan. You may be familiar with it. It's called, I have a card in my pocket that says it's called Medicare. And I find it quite good.
Now, you're using the word communist to jerk people's chains, I know, and you like to pick on, I can tell, even though you say it with a straight face, the socialist America.
I love it.
It's tiny, no question. But how tiny is tiny? I bet it's no smaller than the Marin Coalition. I bet it's no smaller than 10 other groups that I love and participate in and put in hundreds of hours in. So I wouldn't knock the Democratic Socialists of America because it's just one more of 100 political offshoots that happen to latch on this issue of rent control. But you always say, is it Democratic Socialists of America? Oh, far left.
The Democratic Socialists of America are not Scandinavian socialists.
Exactly my point. But throughout Europe, there are democratic socialists all over the place, including serving as prime minister. And there's no reason in America that can't happen either, like Bernie Sanders, except people are so scared of socialists they think they're communists.
If you really want a treat, go to the Democratic Socialist of Marin website and go under blogs. There is 900 wonderful words denouncing me. I sent it out all over the place.
Well, I guess I thought you were being subtle, but maybe you weren't being so subtle. But anyway, we're getting digressing here. We don't have too much time left, so let's finish with these races. We've done almost all the city council races. I forgot Mill Valley, which is a 5-person race. It has both incumbents running for re-election. Urban Carmel, who served his 4 years after being elected overwhelmingly 4 years ago, and running for re-election. Same thing will happen. He's mayor now. Caroline Joaquin was elected in a special election about a year ago. She might not have any problem either, but there are 3 challengers, and I don't know anything about any of them. Catherine Jones,
Cat Jones.
and Mike Koo and Leah Curtis.
Cat Jones is pretty impressive.
Yeah?
Catherine Jones, but she calls herself Cat.
Now, why are they running against the incumbents? If they were,
No, there's a vacancy.
3 seats.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right, there is.
Jim Wickham, who's a
You're right,
longtime,
you're right.
well-regarded
I take it back.
councilman and mayor and former police lieutenant, decided that 10 years was enough, which is kind of our tradition in Mill Valley. We don't have a law, but we have a tradition. Wickham's honoring that. He's the kind of guy that could get elected forever, but understands that there's a time for everything. All good things which come to an end. And when you leave like that, you leave with a very high reputation in town. He is just a splendid guy, and so that it's getting turnover.
It's a good thing in Mill Valley, by the way. It's the only city in Marin that has this informal caucus of all the former council members and mayors. They kind of get together, and when they got 4 or 5 people running for council, these former council members interview them all, and they said, okay, we've decided these are the best, and everybody follows that, and they win. Now, that's nearly always true, but not always. There are only 2 people that have served more than 2 terms, and here's one of them right here. The other is Stephanie Moulton-Peters recently.
And she called me up and said, you think it's okay?
So it's not a seriously written rule. They do make exceptions occasionally. Dick, I'd like to do a 3rd term, and so does Stephanie. Anyway, in Mill Valley, who knows? 2 incumbents, 3 new candidates, and who knows what will happen. Finally, in Larkspur, which is the only city that doesn't have a contest for its regular seats, uncontested, Scott Candell and Gabe Paulson, who walked on uncontested to their first terms 4 years ago. That's really unusual for two at once on the same council for the same time walk on uncontested. And they're doing the same thing 4 years later, so they've never had an election, and they'll be two-term council members. Anyway.
It's unfortunate they have election.
It
turned out to be both first class.
I think so too. But the election is for a short 2-year seat because Kevin Carroll died. And the two candidates are Sarah Margulies and Lana Scott. Lana Scott was in the election, special election last year, and is a tenant and makes no bones about being a tenant advocate. And she thinks it's appropriate because she'd be replacing Kevin Carroll, who died. The other one, Sarah Margulies, I've met too, and she's an impressive woman. So it sounds like we have two impressive, possible strong candidates. What do you think?
Kevin Carroll was a wonderful guy. He passed away. He was a Larkspur council member. I knew him because Kevin would drive me to the airport when I was going to take longer trips. Not because he was a councilman, because he was a cab driver. Oh. And that's how I met him. A friend of mine says, I always use Kevin. And I wanted somebody reliable that would take us when we travel a lot, and it was Kevin. And he would drive his checker cab, the old-fashioned cab. He owned it himself. He was the only driver. He was the only employee. He lived in a mobile home on the east side of the highway. Lovely guy. When I first of all, when you called Kevin, the phone would ring and somebody would say, "Taxi?" That was Kevin answering the phone. Kevin, hi, it's Dick. It's not business today. It's paid newspaper stuff. I read there's a Kevin Carroll running for Larkspur Council. That's not you, is it? Yeah, I'm running. And he won. Unfortunately, he had a number of illnesses and passed away from those illnesses. But just a lovely guy. And if you talk about diversity, Kevin represents the part of the community that normally doesn't get elected to public office. Single guy rides a taxi cab and lives in a mobile home. I mean, that's diversity. And he had a great heart, smart as a whip, and is a loss to the community. And so that's why there's a special election to fill Kevin's seat on the Larkspur City Council.
One last city council race. I can do it in 30 seconds unless somebody has some big comment or question. Corte Madera, 3 candidates for 2 seats, one of them an incumbent. I've never heard of any of them, and this is the only race with no Democrats and no Republicans. All 3 are NPP. Incumbent Fred Casisa and new candidates Charlie Kirshner and James Andrews. James Andrews I've heard of.
Interesting.
Anyway, that's it for the council members, but we got some interesting school board races, we got some special district races like water board races. We were going to get around to the national stuff and barely touch on the state stuff.
Andrew's
San
a former
Rafael
incumbent.
City Council?
San Rafael, wait a minute. I left my iPhone in the car.
James Andrews.
Is that in Marin? The mayor of San Rafael is Kate Collin. She has a nominal opponent, I should start off by saying that, who first of all didn't bother even to show up for the IJ endorsement session. Now, I don't want to say I attend them all because I'm looking at Rachel here and I missed hers. I just couldn't do it. But San Rafael only has 1 contested seat on the council. Rachel's here, and I'm embarrassed to say, you'll be happy to hear, I don't know your opponent.
Mark Galperin, who I know nothing about except that he's a Republican. Anybody else know anything about him?
Okay.
He's he missed getting the, what do you call it, the little tagline under his name.
Oh, the ballot designation.
Yeah, he's a retired nuclear physicist.
That's what it says?
Yeah, it does not say it because he missed, when he put his papers in, he missed getting that on there. But that's what his occupation was.
I've never seen him, I'll just say, the only thing I know about him is from his ballot statement.
I love ballot designations, and someday I'm going to do a collection of statewide great ballot designations. We have a woman running for the water board whose occupation is mother, engineer, artist. The former city manager of Nevada was running for the county school board, and he starts off by saying, father, parent. So if I was going to run for office today, I would say parent, farmer. Farmer, you say, why? I used to have this really large lemon tree. You can't believe the lemons.
You know, there are two kinds of ballot designations. The one on top of the ballot statement, where they're a little looser and you can name 2 or 3, and you can be a little flexible about titles and about whether that's a volunteer activity. But the ballot designation on the ballot is supposed to be incumbent, and only that word only if you're incumbent. And if you choose not to use the word incumbent, which is rare, it has to be your major source of income. And I don't believe they're enforcing that enough. You see all these weird things out there, I think, why don't they challenge that? This is not...
Nobody, you have to, you know.
I did challenge somebody on that who called themselves a nonprofit director. I don't think that's a legitimate nonprofit, but they have a donation page that's a third party. So you donate to the third party and then they take some and kick back. And they wrote a letter to the county saying that they did this, and the county attorney said that there's nothing we can do.
Chances are not going to get anywhere anyway, unless they have money. Sometimes they're privately funded or self-funded candidates. I haven't heard about any. Usually IJ is down to publishing one article about here's the fundraising totals, a little early, maybe come out in the next week or 2.
Yeah, but it's for city councils, it's kind of, yeah.
Well, I sometimes tell you some things. As they say, those 2 Sausalito women 4 years ago raised like 60 or 80,000, which is several times what most candidates raised for city council, even in Sausalito, San Rafael and Nevada. Well, they were starting to get up there when it was that large. But now that when they're back to district, by the way, I didn't mean to skip you, Rachel, I was thinking of these races for the full districts. One in San Rafael, Rachel versus Mark Alperin, and Nevada, we mentioned earlier, James Petray versus Jacob.
Kevin Jacobs.
Thank you, thank you. And so that's the city councils. Now, we got a bunch of school boards, we got a bunch of special district races, but I don't know how much time we spend on it because we're going to run out of time.
I always suggest we move into, we can do questions here. We talk about some of the local partisan races. We have 2. We have a race for the United States House of Representatives. What? There's a congressional race? Yes, there's a congressional race.
Every 2 years.
And 2, we have a race for the California State Assembly in the, which district? 12th district?
I think it's called 12th now.
12th district. Just so you know, the congressional district stretches from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Oregon state line. And the assembly district is all of Marin and 2/3 of Sonoma County.
No, 1/3, lower third.
Well, up to Petaluma?
Sonoma. And it's up to the...
Not Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa. Up to, but not including
But
Santa
not
Rosa.
including Santa Rosa. But there's a good chunk in Sonoma.
Well, Jared's been there for 10 years. He could be there another 10 or 20 if he wants. Damon is now is running for his 2nd term, and he's already granted that same kind of incumbency status where he's not really seriously challenged because he's not the most popular guy in the world, but he's not disliked like 2 or 3 assembly members I can name in the last few decades. So I think they're both completely safe and almost not worth talking about. Although they have more serious challenges than usual. Jared has 4, and Damon has an Andy Pod Shadley who's run before from Nevada, who is sort of a mainstream business guy on the Chamber of Commerce up there and has legitimate qualifications.
He does. He owns Trek Winery, if you know where that is, downtown Nevada. I've met with him. He's a reasonable guy. He's a business person. It'd be kind of unusual to have a solid business person in Sacramento. Pundit. Chris Colombe is a lawyer. A small business he owns is called the Country Law Firm. I believe it's in Lake County.
He looks like a former military, I think he is.
Yes, he is.
And his major issue is Jared Huffman blew it by not preserving some lake in Plumas County or someplace way the hell out there.
In Napa County.
Napa County?
Well, it's, no, Mendocino County.
But that's his major campaign issue, and even if he's right, is he going to win election on that? But he's an impressive looking candidate, and he came to a Marin Coalition event in spring. Did y'all see him?
He's a smart guy, and the other issue he has, and I like to give moderate Republicans at least a shout out, and they both fit that category. Columbus' big issue to me, and I'm going to ask him to give me a couple of quotes on it, is that we do not properly teach history, government, in our schools.
Hard to disagree.
And that's a big deal with him.
By the way, I think it's pronounced Chris Kalum.
Kalum?
There's a Columbus who was some other candidate.
No,
or
you're
something.
correct, Colum.
Chris Kalum.
Kalum. Anyway, I'm impressed by that, because that's a good issue.
So we look at 25% instead of 20.
Have any
pretending
idea
hope of winning.
that they're going to prevail in this election. Neither are renting apartments in Sacramento or Washington. They're normal people when it comes to that. And the reality is, in partisan politics in America today is that the vast majority of districts are either because people move there, economics, sociology. Marin County is a perfect example. You cannot gerrymander this county so that a Republican can win. There's not enough Republicans. And there are counties in Alabama where you can't gerrymander so a Democrat's going to win. It's just, that's the way it is in probably 80% of the United States congressional seats, and in many, many, many state legislature, especially including California. Here's a state that's, I think, 55%, 60% Democratic, 55, 25%, 15, 20% Republican, and 30% no party preference. You know who's going to win, because today people don't vote for the person anymore, they vote for the party. Not good, but that's the reality of life. People are in a tribe.
All right, speaking of Damon, I'm going to titillate you with the most exciting news you're going to hear or think about. I bet you haven't thought about it, but it's extremely important and may dominate the political cycle for the next 2 years. Every 10 years, we get a new assemblyman when they're termed out. Sometimes it's sooner. Mark Levine bailed 1 term early. Damon Connolly is probably going to bail 3 terms early, because he's probably going to run for Mike McGuire's seat, who's termed out. That opens up the Senate seat, and we're right back in the open assembly seat circus / fun time when that's politics that's the most exciting time in Marin, when we have an open assembly seat.
That says to me one word: Brockbank.
No, you're right. I've been in too many of them, but I'm too long past it. So not me, but I can think of several other people who may be gearing up or thinking
Talk
about
about
it.
as people get older for race. Frank Egger, by his own words to me, is 85.
He's got all the energy and intellect that he ever had.
I
have
know.
no problem with his age. None.
I know.
But it's just it's desire now.
I'm talking about it.
And no potential candidate for assembly 2 years from now will talk about it openly now, because we have another election first coming up next month.
Wait till January.
But even sooner than that, right after the election in November, they're going to start talking about it, holding fundraisers, engaging support, and getting endorsements.
And let's mention briefly the United States Senate race. What I was just talking about was those registration numbers in the state of California. I'm going to make a bold prediction right now. I'm really going to go on the line. Adam Schiff is going to be the next United States Senator from California, and Steve Garvey, despite playing not just for the Los Angeles Dodgers, but the San Diego Padres. Talk about a name recognition in Southern California.
It helps, but
It's not going to win.
he's got that pesky little problem called an R after his name.
And some states. But this is California. And we have one-party states all over America,
Yeah.
and it's not a healthy thing.
I agree.
It's getting worse.
Now, the big deal is president. Of course, we can talk about that for hours and hours, and that's one of the sad things about American democracy is I found for decades that all people care about is the presidential race. Not this room. This room has a much broader and deeper appreciation for all kinds of politics, but the public generally all they care about is the presidential race. They don't care about anything else. So I hate to feed that by talking about the presidential race, because we all feel like we're experts and we all know it, and what can we possibly add? But we will.
Well, we're not experts. I belong to a political luncheon group. To be part of this group, you're supposed to be a former elected official, could be a current elected official, you're a judge, journalist, lobbyist.
Sacramento.
It's called Sacramento Seminar, founded by 3 former members of the state, Senate. Well, when you go across the bridge here, you go across the Jack Knox. We can get into that. We proved that we knew nothing about presidential elections this year, because we made all these predictions 2 or 3 months ago about what was going to happen to Harris, Biden, Nikki Haley. What did we know?
We're all
Nothing. Nothing. And holy moly.
I agree. Things have changed so dramatically. So you don't want to take anything for granted, including the presidential race, because things could change again. I haven't seen such a massive shift in such a short period of time, ever. And, you know, Biden, I couldn't figure out why he wasn't very popular. And then I saw him before he took his first step on stage in June and said, we're in trouble. And I thought, we'll get over this. He didn't. We didn't. And then Kamala, nobody liked her for 3.5 years. And suddenly everybody unites behind her. I'm as mystified as everybody else. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I always liked her. We needed that. And I think maybe subconsciously or consciously, all the Democrats said, man, Trump is winning. We got to do something. It would be very bad if Trump won. Unite behind Kamala is all we could do. And they did. And we did. They are.
Who knew? And the answer is, who knows? We're in a bubble, but everybody in America is in their own bubble, their own area. God knows Las Vegas is a different bubble than Reno, which is different from the rest of the state of Nevada, which is in its own rural bubble. And so Marin County and parts of Sonoma County are in a bubble. San Francisco's in a slightly different bubble. Your friends, the Democratic Socialists and the Progressives, are stronger in San Francisco.
I know one guy slightly.
The stronger in San Francisco. which is true, I mean, they are. It's a heck of a race. Though even there, I recently had a chance to, our group met with all the Cape people running for mayor. Aaron Peskin, you know, a lot of things I was saying, yeah, you know.
I love the story about the 3 former San Francisco mayors in the Chronicle and supporting 3 different mayoral candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Art Agnos and Willie Brown and Frank Jordan.
Yeah, Willie hasn't lost his step.
I love
I've
it.
seen him recently, and he just hasn't lost his step. The one thing that really has, if you watch carefully, I was privileged to have lunch with him one day, just the 2 of us, and he said, at Tattage's in the booth, and he says, he turns away the menu. He has terrible eyes, macular degeneration, and he says, the reason I go to the same restaurants every time is I know what's on the menu. and people would dictate, and he has a good memory, he can dictate, he wrote his, you know, but physically, mentally, he hasn't aged.
Listen, the race I want to talk about, and we would regret it if we didn't, is the water board. It seems like every 10 years or so, the water board has more anti-incumbent fervor, as I call it, than most districts or school boards or city councils, and throw out more incumbents than usual, and sometimes it lasts more than 1 election cycle. Now, 2 years ago, 1 of the incumbents got the hint and stepped down, the other 2 did not get defeated. How often does it happen where all 3 seats turn over? So we got 3 new ones, and now we got the other 2 seats up. One of them says, don't want that to happen to me, and stepped down after only 1 term. And the other one is running again after 20 years. 20 years. You'd think he'd get the memo, but apparently not. Now, he is very confident in his own ability of water. Larry Russell says, my nickname is Dr. Water, and I'm all this professional, and I know more than everybody else on the board put together 10 times over, plus all the staff put together 10 times over, almost that bluntly. It's kind of a turnoff. But he's facing a young, inexperienced guy who looks like he's a kindergartner, but he was on a water board in South Lake Tahoe, and maybe he can win, I don't know. And is that the Jack Kenny race?
Jack Kenny's in that race.
Yeah. And then and Dawn Matheson there's a third.
She's back in the.
Oh, she's in that race. Yeah, now the other one, Jack Kenny's in the Diana Mayer and Robert Sandoval race. The other race is where the guy stepped down. It's a true open seat, and Jack Kenny, who ran for an at-large or a different seat.
And he moved.
Yeah, and so he moved, and he's running again, and people are wondering why because they don't see any compelling reason for that. And Robert Sandoval, I've seen him a couple times passing out his endorsements card, but I think, she was here earlier and she had to leave, but Diana Mayer is sharp, bright, longtime attorney, and learned all the issues and got endorsed by 4 of the 5 supervisors, so all of a sudden I think she's the overwhelming front runner.
One of the hard things that you're experiencing right now is all these names. How could you possibly remember all these folks? The answer is, Greg and I spent a lot of time on this stuff. We can't. That's why we got these lists over here. It's impossible. We elect in this country, America, so many different offices that it is impossible to follow. If you're a resident of Nanaimo, British Columbia, if you know where that is on Vancouver Island, just north of Victoria, you're going to vote for a council member in Nanaimo, it's a city. You're a member of the Legislative Assembly, who sits in Victoria, state parliament, if you will. Your national member of the parliament. Anyone else that they vote for? I don't know. It's good. 3 or 4 people. Good. And so counting that ballot is not very hard. We have a voting system that we seem to love, and that the Register of Voters in this county prepares something like 40 or 50 different variations of the ballot.
Oh, more than that.
If you live in Marin Keys, that's a very different ballot than the person who lives in the nearest supervisorial district in Novato, though you still vote for the Novato Fire Protection District, the Novato School Board, I think, the North County representative on the Board of Education, County Board of Education, then you've got the State Board of Education, of course, and you've got the High School Board and the College Board. Canadians would look at you and think, what the hell's going on up there? Or down there, as case may be.
Yes.
relating to that and to your earlier comments about the staff in Fairfax
Yes.
being non-responsive, what do you think about the ballot measure to turn the city clerk into an appointed staff position rather than an elected position?
Absolutely. The appointed person isn't any better than the person who's elected, by the way. She doesn't return phone calls either. It goes to, it's management. The person who runs the town, really, on a day-to-day basis, is the city manager. When you have those problems, most city managers in this county are first rate. First rate.
And
That's unfortunately, when we have a non-responsive staff, the only way to make up for that is to have a very responsive city manager. That happens where the city manager says, please go through me. That's fine, but you've got to be available. That's in Fairfax. The reason they elected those clerks in the old days, that was before the city manager form of government came about after World War II. In those days, the clerk, the guy those days, sitting at City Hall, had a lot of power. You wanted to be his cousin. You were a plumber, for instance.
But also they needed to exude confidence. They wanted people to have confidence in them. So they need to have a certain, now, that was then, this is now. Decades later, the role of the city clerk is totally different. But they still need to be friendly and open, give confidence to the public that this is a trustworthy person. But I don't believe it should be elected. That day is past. I bet you would agree. An even easier question is Santa Fe is the only, a lot of them have elected city clerks, but elected city attorney, we're attorneys. That's a really bad idea.
Yeah.
Most people like to hire their own attorney. City councils are no different. So why should you have an elected, publicly elected, who could be a real goofball, city attorney when the council wants to pick their own attorney like everybody else?
A couple of years ago, a number of years ago, the elected city attorney of San Rafael, these people are generally private practice lawyers in San Rafael, said, this is ridiculous. The city attorney said, this is ridiculous. We should not elect the city attorney. This is the elected city attorney speaking. Thank you very much. We should be appointed by the city council, which is how business private sector works. And what do the voters say? Hell no.
Well, I was just going to say, people often, especially if they're new and young and inexperienced, say, God, there's so many levels of government, reduce that, consolidate. Yeah, okay. There's something appealing about the European system where you vote for one commissioner, and that commission appoints everybody, so you only have to vote for one person. That's a lot simpler, but you feel more removed from your government because you can't really get in touch with anybody that's really with that department, and you only have elected one of them. It's, a lot of people don't like that. Now, there are several levels below that, and one of them is when we have like a full-service city like San Rafael, your city council member should be an expert in all those things because they do all those things, not Novato. But then, with these districts, does Novato really need 20 elected officials? No. That's too many. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about this is school boards. Marin has like 17 school boards currently. Oh, way too many. First of all, Sonoma has 30-something. And I have heard Mary Jane Berg several times, 10, 20, 30 years ago, the longtime former superintendent of public instruction, give lectures on how Marin used to have 60 school districts, and then they consolidated down to 50 or whatever school districts, and then they consolidated down to 40. So they've come a long way. And I haven't seen them consolidate maybe one in the last few decades, and I'm just not sure we're going to go any further because people like to see their elected school board member or city council member in the supermarket. Some say, no, the elected officials like to be seen and recognized in the supermarket. Maybe both are true.
Yeah. Let's do questions. Yes? Yes?
All right, we're gonna open it up so we get some of you folks in with your questions now. If you have something you want to ask, raise your hand and I'll bring your microphone over and we'll hear from you. Anybody want to jump in? I've got one while you're thinking about it, and that is, this notion that we're facing kind of a strange heretical national presidential election that breaks all precedent and kind of makes us scratch our head and say, what's going on? And I've heard a number of people commenting over the last few months, really, way before Kamala even got in the race, but just the idea that here's Trump, what he's done to the Republican Party, if you will, and he's, in the opinion of some people, changed it from a national political party into a cult of personality. And there's a strong argument I think you can make for that. Then they reach the point of saying, well, once he's gone, it might be this week, it might be next year, it might be in 4 years, but once he's gone, the Republican Party will get back to what it used to be. Trump will be out of the picture. And other people say, no, it isn't Trump that has changed it into a cult. The cult is there, they just found this guy called Donald Trump to be the face of the cult. And if he goes, it's going to be somebody else. It's going to be J.D. Vance, it's going to be whoever, what's her name, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Someone will take the place of this individual, and the cult will continue, and the Republican Party will never go back to the way it used to be. I know it's a little bit out of our context here, but I've been curious what you guys think about that.
You know, I would think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the logical successor to Donald Trump, because he is truly crazy. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, and
She's not truly crazy?
I'm not as easy on immigration as some people are. I think they made a huge mistake when they let this South African guy in. You know him?
Musk.
But Elon Musk? Yeah, that was a mistake. They should have had a border enforcement. There's no question about that. The one thing we haven't talked about today is cats. And I thought there'd be a lot of cat questions.
Yeah.
I'm a cat person. I've never had a dog. My cat's still in a little pine box on my bookcase. Toby was her name. And I'm offended when people bring up the topic of cats and don't pay respect to our feline friends. So it's come up often lately, and apparently that for some reason, unbeknownst to me, in Springfield, Ohio, all of a sudden, people are eating cats. And I suspect there's going to be a Springfield cookbook come out. But so, are there any cat questions?
Did you see how Taylor Swift signed her letter minutes after the endorsement? Childless cat lady. In other words, she's clearly identifying with, don't go ragging on cat ladies.
One of the reasons that Taylor Swift, many reasons, acted as she did was that the Trump campaign put out an artificial intelligence video of her waving the Trump flag saying she endorsed Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about an invitation
Yeah.
for a person that has 325 million followers on the internet to take a stand, putting out an AI of somebody who's going to has the ability to react.
I don't follow Taylor Swift at all, but everybody knew where she stood already. And I liked reading that she's not going to change anybody to vote from Trump to Kamala, to Harris, but she may turn a bunch of people who weren't going to vote into Harris voters, so that could make a difference.
That's right.
All right, we've got questions over here.
Let's jump. Over here. I'm sorry. I didn't see.
We'll move around.
I didn't see your question.
Yeah, I'll just add that Taylor's response to Taylor Swift, 370,000 plus people have gone to register to vote. My name is Beth, and I'm very curious. It gets to talking about voter engagement or just engagement in the county. And I think a great symptom of this is the fact that we have these incumbents that aren't challenged. Do you have, with your vast experience and observation of our politics over time, any thoughts on how we might be able to further involve our fellow citizens, neighbors, friends in the political process? I see a lot of people in this room tonight. I noticed the demographic. It would be interesting to see how we might promote more attention to elections.
Every year, almost every election, at least one candidate, if not all of them, say, need more civic engagement, need more civic. Very popular topic, who's going to disagree with this, mom, apple pie. But it's absolutely correct. We do need more civic engagement. It's a shame that something I feel is falling off. We need to reinvigorate it. How do you do that? Not just by saying, this is an important issue, let's have more civic engagement. Thank you very much. When I get elected, I will mandate that. No, what it takes is a charismatic individual to lead a charge in a campaign and bring followers, and that's how you get civic engagement. We are lucky to have some people that are really good at that in Marin County. You're wondering about who the local politicians are. One comes to mind who was given short shrift earlier, is the mayor of Santa Fe, Kate Collin.
I don't give Kate Collin short shrift. I think she's terrific.
She is terrific, and she's not only running practically unopposed, she just finished a course on elite mayors leadership or something, so she's now some certificated super mayor. She was already really good, but now she's really, really, really good. And she is so into civic engagement. Don't even start because you get prepared to have your ear bent off for an hour and a half. That's a good thing. So she probably, there are probably lots of others and lots of other councils and lots of everywhere, but Kate Collins is as big on that as anybody I know. She's a very powerful person.
Kate Collins. I want to just say one thing.
Microphone.
The way to get people involved is when they're younger. High school is classic. And I just think that that's crucial. When I was in high school, it was pushed on us that we were going to be involved. I mean, we were told to go to campaign headquarters, and we did. They didn't tell us who to go to, but you're going to get out there and get active. And in school, we were junior year. In fact, the day Kennedy was shot, there were stacks of New York Times in our classroom because everybody was reading the Times. We were told to do that, and we realized he was in Dallas because that was the front page of the Times on the teacher's desk. And so you engender that, and it stays. I mean, you don't look at me, but it stays. But it started at the younger level, and so if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty, that's a wonderful way, productive way to get people involved in their own country, city, state.
That's a great example of a president being that model and inspiring, charismatic person that inspires people. JFK, no better example probably. RFK had a lot of that, and had he not been assassinated, he might have had that too. Not RFK Jr. But there are once in a while those candidates, but mostly not. I mean, you can say all the good things in the world about Hillary Clinton, but she was not a rock star, or Joe Biden, but he's not a rock star. I realize with Barack Obama, he ain't a rock star. Sometimes that's true for city councils too. So it helps if you are charismatic. So recently I've been telling people, how does it stand out? Yeah, okay, tell me why we should vote for you. And they said, well, I'm a CBA. Wrong answer. Say, you need to vote for me because I am the only one in the candidates that feel that's teamed up with these people to help this and solve this problem, and that's why we're all supporting me. Okay then, I'm going to vote for that person.
All right, here we are over here. Next question.
Ted Gabler, question, you've talked a lot this evening about the political party for these local races. I think it's against the law in California to state your party on a local ballot.
Yes.
No. Oh, on the ballot.
On the
Yes.
ballot, I think you're right, but not in your mailings.
Yeah, these are all nonpartisan positions, you're correct. And there's a very interesting tidbit of history that there was a period of time about 20 years ago when every group in the world was allowed to endorse their favorite candidate except the political parties. In other words, Democrats could not endorse candidates. What? Or Republicans. That was overturned by a court, and now the Democrats can return to endorsing. And they are one of the major endorsers in the county, as they are everywhere. And so their endorsement means something. Even in the nonpartisan races, they endorse. And it's true that it's harder and harder to get their political parties. If you want to hide it, you can. But people have ways of finding it out. The state Democratic Party will issue to its local chapters a list of all the registered Democrats, so that when we have a field of candidates, we know who the Democrats are, so we know who we can invite to our candidates forums.
But in Marin, of course, you end up inviting all the candidates.
Almost all. But not all of them seek our endorsement. Most do, at least for city council. Fewer among the school boards, fewer still among the special districts. So they say, I don't care, this doesn't help me, I'm trying to appeal to everybody. So there is that faction, but among the top political candidates every year, probably more and more so, city councils especially, nearly all of them are Democrats and nearly all of them seek the Democrats' endorsement.
Okay, Stephen? Hey, thank you. First, I just want to thank you guys. I never want to miss one of these shows.
Use the microphone.
Is it?
Yeah, there.
Okay, all right. I don't want to spit on it. Anyway, right. Okay, so I don't want to ever miss one of your shows. Thank you very much for doing this. But the question I've got is that I keep hearing that because town and city council people are often sort of new, they may have been around a bit, that frequently the person who really runs the show is the legal counsel of the town. And in Fairfax, that's largely our problem, I think. So how do we deal with the situation where it's the legal counsel has all the historical knowledge and the council members have to constantly ask her, Janet, what?
Here's the frank, you want a frank answer?
Frank Egger?
Yeah, no. The frank answer
Vote for me, I know.
is that is not typical. It is true in Fairfax. It is not typical. And if you want to change that, if I was a Fairfaxonian, is that a Fairfax resident? I would be very upset with the city council and the city manager that allows that to happen. I've received communications from citizens outlining the billing that city attorney is making, which is really out of line. And the city attorney said, I represent the council. The city attorney doesn't represent the council. The city attorney represents the city, the whole operation. It's not a personal attorney for the city, and you don't protect the city council members. You give an honest, straight answer. Most, 9 out of 10 in Marin County, 9 out of 10 statewide, professional city attorneys know that. One of my legal partners for a long time was a man named Richard Winnie. He was county council of Alameda County, city attorney of the city of Oakland, and he's passed away. But my go-to guy for municipal law questions, Winnie would have answered that question just like I did. He represents the county of Alameda as the county council. He was the head guy, the county council of Alameda County. He doesn't represent the county supervisors. He's friendly with the county supervisors. He works with the county supervisors. They're part of the county, but he doesn't represent them individually. He represents them as the governing board of the county. The city attorney if I was elected to the council in Fairfax, and I had 3 votes, I would be looking for a new city attorney and a new city manager. How's that fair? She'll now never return.
I agree with Dick, and that it is very rare, and let me insert just my personal opinion. I didn't know that about Fairfax. It happens, I'm sure. But maybe just personalities. Sometimes a city manager, like a city attorney, like any other certain percentage of individuals, are outgoing and flamboyant and dominant, and everybody in the audience is watching them, and everybody on the council is looking to them for approval, and that's a bad look. I think the ideal city attorney should sit there and be completely invisible. Nobody in the audience notices them ever, and ideally they don't say a word. And if they do, it's like, excuse me, Mr. City Attorney, can you weigh in on that? The answer is yes. Thank you. That's it. You know, that's the ideal city attorney, and that's usually the case.
Usually, far the majority.
Okay, question over here?
A real basic question. How many of the councils, city councils in Marin are unsalaried?
None have a salary.
Stipend mostly.
Mostly a stipend.
A few hundred a month.
Except in the Tiburon Peninsula, where they traditionally receive nothing.
San Anselmo, for example, is $3,600 a year.
3,600.
$3,600 a year.
When I was a councilman, I got $150 a month, but when I was mayor,
Before your question,
200.
Can I ask? Can I answer for 1 minute Scott's question earlier on? In fact, I think it was the first question. I'm not sure it got fully answered. I believe in the first few things you said that Trump has changed the Republican Party dramatically. I don't think anybody disagrees with a Democrat or Republican. And they have changed it, in my opinion, I think most Democrats think, into a cult of personality. I don't know if Republicans deny that or not. I'm not sure it will go back to the way it was, despite the claims of some people. But Trump, yeah, I keep thinking Trump will go away too, either after November or 4 years from now. And age-wise, he will, but he's got his kids, he's got his, and he will always want to cling to that power as long as he's alive, even if it's another decade or two, to want to be the kingmaker, to try to endorse people. So that may carry on, that cult of personality, even long after he's running for office.
That's what Vance is doing, right?
Vance now, or I worry more about his kids. I mean, I hate Vance too, but I don't like his kids either. But he's trying to leave a legacy, and it will change the Republican Party fundamentally. I don't see it going back to the way it was. Too bad. I never liked the Republicans, but now I'm looking at those old Republicans saying they were really nice and reasonable. And some of them used to be environmentalists, and they'd sit down around the table and they'd know each other's friends and kids and family. Not anymore. All out war all the time.
Now they're the Lincoln Project.
I'm not as critical of historically. I said one time at a group like this, when Barack Obama was running against John McCain, we're in a situation where America can't lose.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
I wanted to respond to the issue of voter engagement. And I would encourage everyone here, men and women, to become members of the League of Women Voters. That is our mission. And in fact, right now we have 50 ambassadors who are high school students who one of their, this young man is shaking his head, yes, so you must be one or no one. Okay, they're in most of the high schools in Marin, and they do things such as pre-register students so that when they become 18, they are automatically registered to vote.
This is new, a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's wildly successful. Some of these young people are amazing. So that is confirming what
Great.
both speakers said.
I wanted to comment on that too, because I agree, there are some exciting things happening in high schools I have not seen before. The ambassadors of hope and opportunity walk around and do these things. And these people, they're pre-registering young people. The way I understand it, they walk around with like a red, white, and blue voter hat or something. How cool is that? Or a big sign. How cool is that? So all the students go, whoa, what is that? And if it becomes the cool thing to say, I pre-registered, that's exactly the kind of movement we need to get young people to vote. Right now they vote in a little smaller numbers than they should. Let's get it.
The good thing to pass on is when you look at me and Greg talking, obviously we have fun at this. We enjoy this. And you know, when you get into it, most of the people, I even suspect Mimi when she's pushing, enjoys it.
She does, she's smiling most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, we could probably take another question or two. We don't have anywhere to go, we don't need to be out, so if you guys are hanging in there, let's keep it going, and then we'll wrap it up soon.
Hi, so we're from San Domenico, and
Okay.
we're representatives from political clubs there. But I noticed that a lot of our peers are really turned off by politics and find it such a polarizing issue in this day and age. And I just wondered, what suggestions do you both have working in politics for so long that we can pass on to our peers to really help them get engaged and interested about issues that really matter?
You know, my parents were not particularly political. I mean, they voted. My father had feelings based upon the Depression. But for me, it was really in school that I was turned on to this stuff. And I really like, first of all, I'll give you a not controversial statement, one of my beliefs. Today's politics is less about government and political science and more about sociology. I had a wonderful high school sociology teacher that gave me a love in the field, so I kept reading it and took it more as I went to college. But we do things based on tribe, based on what our peers say. We act based on outside stimuli, which is not based on public policy. And so the more that we deal with other folks who also smile and enjoy this, it starts to build up a camaraderie, it builds up a little community, and you really start getting active. And you know, who knows, I would have thought all those years ago when I was this age, I'd be writing in a daily newspaper about politics. I still love it, based on that early time. So if you can share the, I don't want to pick a Kamala Harris slogan here, but if you can share the joy.
Yeah, that would be true regardless of the
If
candidate.
you can share the joy. And when politics is a joy, politics that tears people apart is never a joy. Politics that builds people together can be a joy, can make friendships, and you can work together. I have close friends on both sides, or the old days, who regard it the same way. I mean, we used to have a very insidious, I went to the University of San Francisco I did my law school there, and I was involved in politics there. And we had a very insidious relationship between the young Democrats and the young Republicans. Insidious is the word because they cross-dated. There was a lot of it. We were all part of that. And we'd all have parties together. And coming out of the headquarters, well, we'll meet at Freddie's or Jane's place tonight. Both sides. You know, I mean, we had fun together. And those are still friends.
I have a suggestion. It's taken me, decades to do this, but I'm starting to do it more and more, and that is getting a little confrontational. Maybe it's as I get older and I don't care what people think about me and I'm not likely to run for office again, but I hate it when people use politics as a dirty word. They don't know what it means, they're using it wrong, they just use it as a catch-all dirty word, like, that's just politics, or that's the opposite of politics. I'm starting to challenge people. What do you mean by that? Politics. Don't use politics as a dirty word. And then come up with some good pithy line, and every month or two or a year or two, it's a different one for me. But recently, it's like, politics is just the way we do things as a community that we can't do individually. Doesn't that sound good? All right, let's do it then. What's bad about that? I don't know.
Well, somebody said you don't talk about religion, politics, or sex.
But nothing to talk
What's
about.
left?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Oh, sex become.
All right, so our next event is going to be sex, right? No. Okay, I think we probably are ready to roll. Let me just say thank you again to everybody for coming here. Thank you to our presenters, Dick and Greg. Our dynamic duo, another epic presentation, and thank you. Next time is October, 10? Is that right? Do I have that date right?
Oh, maybe, yeah.
With Mimi,
Yeah.
and that's going to be here. So look at our website, it's marincoalition.org. We'll have that next event up in the next day or so, and you can register for that. Hopefully we'll get a lot of you here. Go ahead.
And we have a new website at sensibletaxpayers.org, and you can go there to sign up for a webinar on Tuesday night for the District 2 Supervisor race at 7 o'clock at night. And then the following night at 7 o'clock will be for the Marin Municipal Water District, both seats that are up for election. So I encourage you to go there and sign up.
And keep an eye on that because we're doing one for the San Anselmo Town Council, but we haven't finalized the date.
Kevin's holding something.
I think, Dick, you did the primary debate with the supervisors, right?
I did.
For us.
That cost did it a couple of months ago, and that was just time so well spent.
Yes.
That was just really, really well done.
And Dick impartially moderates, and he does a fabulous job on these events.
Which is why he doesn't endorse.
Now, here I get my opinion. That's why it's firm. So when I do the moderations, it's nice to see you all.
So before you go, thank you one more
Kevin's got
time.
something.
We have leftover cookies, please take them.
Oh, I'm gonna have a cookie.
And then if you haven't done your survey, kindly take a chance, and if you need a pencil, let us know, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
I go to my ballot.
Willing to let us take